Rand Paul's beautiful and hilarious grievances.
Mr. Reagan.
Before we start, remember to buy all my overpriced crap on Teespring. I got this new Trump collection. It's 6 original Trump designs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My family back in Oregon, they hate these, and they mercilessly ridiculed me for making them. So you know they must be cool. And check out this ad for Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, which I repurposed for Donald Trump. I mean, come on, you don't get cooler than this. If you like this stuff, buy some of it. Or if not, just get a Mr. Reagan t-shirt or an America First mug. Or just send me a super thanks to support my brutal caffeine addiction. I need help. If everyone watching this video donated just $1 through a super thanks, I would have enough money to save the world. Just saying. All right, now let's get on with the show. Joe Biden claims that he needs $14 billion to close the border. Of course, that's ridiculous. Donald Trump did it for exactly $0. But let's say that were true. Okay, Joe, maybe you can take your $14 billion by diverting funds from some of the stuff in Rand Paul's list of $9 billion in ridiculous government waste. Now, this was a video proposed by a fan of the show, Lauren Collins, on X, Twitter, formerly Twitter. Her name is Smartster86. So thank you for that. You know, I like to produce videos that report on news that I feel passed under the radar, stuff that wasn't widely reported or wasn't as widely reported as I think it deserved. And one of those stories that I think was really underreported was Rand Paul's annual list of grievances. I think that the news covered this like very, very briefly. They were just like, oh, this is kind of like a funny little news thing. But I think it's far more important than the news gives it credit for. And it is funny, but it is also awful because we're not talking just about wasteful government spending. We're talking about corruption. And let me just give you the first one here. This is the first of his grievances. And this one is truly absurd. The United States spent $6 million, a small amount by US government standards, but just imagine if you had that money instead. $6 million spent on tourism in Esna, Egypt. Just why? Why? Now, maybe it's just a coincidence, but also this year, Senator Bob Menendez was indicted by federal prosecutors for taking bribes and for secretly acting as an agent for the, wait for it, Egyptian government. And again, look, maybe that's just a coincidence, but this guy was getting thousands of dollars in bribes from the government of Egypt while serving as the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. This guy was given cash, gold bars, and a freaking Mercedes. And somehow Egypt, they get US taxpayer money to promote tourism. Oh, and by the way, we also give them money for border security, which I think is particularly ironic. Okay, well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to list the dumbest examples of government waste on Rand Paul's list here in just one moment. First, of course, I have to sell you something. Countless people are mistaking private browsing tabs as a way to stay anonymous online. It has gotten so bad that a popular web browser had to update their terms to make it clear that private browsing tabs do not stop websites from collecting your data. Even with private browsing tabs enabled, you can still be tracked by websites and internet service providers. While many tech-savvy people already know that private modes in web browsers don't make them anonymous, the average user is being misled. That's why I protect my privacy with Virtual Shield VPN. As you guys know, I've used Virtual Shield for quite a long time. And considering my personal and professional opposition to the current regime, Virtual Shield VPN is a service that I would not do without. Virtual Shield helps protect your data and finances from cyber criminals, ISPs, rogue tech companies, data mining giants, and more. With Virtual Shield's anonymous browsing, a strict no-log policy, unlimited bandwidth, and built-in malware and ad blocking, it is a world-class VPN for anyone who cares about privacy. Cover your tracks with a military-grade encryption and an industry-leading VPN starting today. Now be sure to use my link in the description below because everyone who signs up using that link gets 67% off and a 60-day risk-free trial. Try it now before signups end by clicking on my personal affiliate link in the description below. So this is Rand Paul's Festivus list of grievances. Festivus is, of course, the holiday made famous by Seinfeld as a comedic alternative to Christmas.
A Festivus for the rest of us.
And this holiday includes an airing of grievances.
The tradition of Festivus begins with the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people.
So years ago, Rand Paul took this idea and he ran with it, producing his yearly list of grievances of government wasteful spending, which we all love and appreciate. Thank you, Ron Paul, and thank you, Jerry Seinfeld. All right, so let's look at some more of these grievances. Rand Paul took particular interest in Dr. Anthony Fauci, as you might imagine. But I think one of the most ridiculous examples of Fauci-related wasteful spending was what Rand Paul calls Dr. Fauci's Monkey Island.
WJCO continues our investigation of Monkey Island. The island off the coast of South Carolina is filled with monkeys. According to an urban legend, they were brought in for medical testing and experiments. So I went to the island to find out exactly what's going on and why the animals were brought there. A very interesting story. You know, the more I learned about this, the more intrigued I became. And as we search for the real story behind Monkey Island.
You lucky people, you lucky.
There's another one on top of that.
Yeah, there's another one. Must be a dozen of them. They're going back into the woods now.
After our trip, we took our findings to David Taub for some clarity.
The local legend is there's this secret colony of monkeys over there. We got, you know, Dr. Moreau in the secret island. But there's no validity to that whatsoever. It's a breeding colony that was established in 1979 for Food and Drug Administration for production of animals for the testing of the polio vaccine, the Sabin vaccine.
How do you know all this?
Because I'm the one who started it.
Taub was recruited to be the scientist in charge of Monkey Island in 1979. He put the project together and established the colony, running it for 20 years. He says testing is done on some of the monkeys, just not there.
Animals would be sent to the Bethesda campus of Food and Drug Administration where the polio vaccine testing took place.
According to the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, research continues on the monkeys today, but they won't say for what. Taub is no longer affiliated with the island, but thinks today the research has shifted from things like polio to finding vaccines and cures for diseases and viruses like Marburg, HIV, maybe even Ebola. He says the state of South Carolina owns the land. The monkeys are property of the U.S. government. And if you're thinking about heading to the island this weekend, think again. It's private property. You will be arrested for trespassing.
And just for fun, I'd like to show you a video that I shot just last week. This is one of the most horrifying experiences of my life. An encounter with a real-life zombie monkey.
This monkey just jumped out and hissed at me and just about scared the absolute crap out of me.
I don't know how that monkey got scalped, and I don't want to know. All I know is that was terrifying. I've also got some footage of adorable baby monkeys.
Wow.
Here in Asia, they are everywhere, these little guys, and they are adorable. But we probably shouldn't be spending $33.2 million in taxpayer money to maintain an island full of them. Because why? I don't even understand this, if I'm honest. If the government needs animals to test on, there are private companies who could provide them for a lot less than $33 million per year. Another absurd expense listed was from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which funded a study to find out if the color of a dog's fur makes them more or less hot while walking in the sun. It's unknown how much money was provided for this particular study, but the researchers concluded that the fur makes absolutely no difference in the body temperature of the dog. Thank goodness they resolved that. I would have wondered about that forever. The taxpayer-funded stupidity that I found most annoying, however, comes from the Department of Homeland Security, who spent taxpayer money training their employees to learn how to, quote, show up to work as their authentic and best selves. I wrote this script a while ago, so I kind of forgot about that. What the F? All right. You know, I actually shouldn't laugh at that because this is taxpayer money that is being wasted. Our money that we spend in taxes, but, you know, sometimes you've got to laugh to keep from crying. Homeland Security also financed the production of a series of graphic novels called the Resilient series to help educate people about misinformation. Basically, don't listen to conservatives like Mr. Reagan. The military ruined $89 million worth of delicate turbine engines by leaving them outside. The NIH funded a study of the sleeping habits of monkeys on meth. The NIH also funded a $3.8 million study to investigate, quote, COVID-19 misinformation exposure on social media, specifically among Black and rural communities. Really, the irony about that is that the government was spreading misinformation. So the misinformation that they're trying to study on social media among Black and rural communities is actually probably legitimate information that they just think is misinformation because they're misinforming everybody. Anyway, I digress. Finally, under Dr. Fauci, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases spent $477,121 to create and study transgender monkeys. They really like monkey studies. I don't know what's up with that. Now, according to Rand Paul, the lab worked to make male lab monkeys transgender to address social injustices suffered by transgender persons, such as transgender women, individuals who were assigned a male sex at birth, but expressed their gender along a female spectrum. Well, isn't that just inclusive? Isn't that just lovely? We're trying to create transgender lab monkeys so that we can study them for social injustices. I mean, have you ever heard of a bigger waste of money? And you know, the thing is, all of this is ridiculous. Of course. But here's the thing. Whether it's the $14 billion Biden says that he needs in order to close the border, or sending $6 million to Egypt to promote tourism while Bob Menendez takes bribes from Egypt, or if we're talking about any of this ridiculous government waste, a lot of this stuff is a total grift. I always say Democrats love to create problems because then they can spend tax money to fix those problems. Right? Anytime you hear about any like public transportation project, any logistics project that the Democrats are trying to work out, notice that it always takes a lot longer and costs a lot more than they promise. Why is that? It's because they're stealing the money. That's essentially why that is. Because every time Democrats tell you there's a problem and we have to fix that problem, well, then comes the bribes, then comes the kickbacks, then comes all the other grifts. And the bigger the problem is that they say exists, the bigger the grift, right? Biden's $14 billion border claim is one of the biggest I've ever seen. $14 billion that he doesn't need at all. But if you got a problem and you use taxpayer money to fix it, that taxpayer money can then go to your friends, and your friends can then funnel a bit of that back into your own bank accounts. So this is the Democrats being Democrats, transferring money around in exactly the same way criminals do to hide where that money's going and to eventually line their own pockets. And some of this is other kinds of corrupt back-scratching and favoritism and just stupid spending. So it's a bit of fun to laugh at, but in my view, most of this is in one way or another corrupt. This is why they hate Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't partake in this stuff. And if he is able to expose a lot of it, a lot of these guys may go to prison. Now, if you're particularly interested in this stuff and you want to see Rand Paul's list for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description below. It's kind of funny, but more than anything, it's depressing. It's a vivid illustration of just how corrupt our government is. And now I've got to pitch my grift to you. Go buy all my overpriced stuff on Teespring. Like I said, I've got some really great t-shirts and mugs that I'm really proud of. So go have a look at that. And you know what? It's not a grift anymore because I genuinely believe that these designs are awesome. They're not overpriced because it's original art by Mr. Reagan. Or you know what? Just send me money via the super thanks here on YouTube so that we can keep trying to save the world. These videos are not always great, as I say, but every once in a while, I produce a gem. All right, thanks for watching. And remember, it's not that liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much that is not so. Good night.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.